Welcome to Resilience and Resolve with Lance Drury.
Welcome back to Resilience and Resolve with attorney Lance Drury. Lance has spent more than 30 years helping individuals and small business owners resolve serious tax problems. I'm Evan Mack, and today we're talking about one of the most serious enforcement actions the IRS can take: seizing physical property to satisfy unpaid tax debt. While it doesn't happen every day, it's important to understand when and why the IRS may take this step. Lance, my man, welcome back.
How you doing, Evan? It's great to see you again. Always a pleasure to be here.
Good to see you too, Lance. It's been a while. It's been a while. You good?
I'm good. I'm good.
Happy to hear. So, Lance, when people think about IRS collection, they often picture wage garnishments or bank levies. In what situation can the IRS actually seize physical property?
Well, that is a seizure of that, but they're only going to go after your home if you've really blown them off. You owe a lot of debt, and that's the only asset you have to satisfy the IRS debt. The most common is bank levies, wage garnishments. They'll take 15% of your Social Security. However, if you put it in the bank, they can take the whole thing. And then, of course, they can come after you home. It doesn't happen often. I think they probably do less than 100 home seizures or real estate seizures every year. But it does happen from time to time. But you really got to make them mad. And you have to have that as the only asset that can be used to help settle your IRS debt.
What types of property can the IRS legally take when someone has significant unpaid tax debt?
Well, the IRS legally can take any kind of personal property, but I've never seen them come after a car. I did have the state of Missouri come after somebody's vehicle once and seize that. But as a practical matter, the IRS is not in the business of wanting to seize your property and then selling it to somebody else. To them, they figure that's uh, you know, a lack of resources to do it. It's too much time. It's too much trouble. So even though, the most common is bank levies and also wage garnishments, those are the ones you're going to see because that's the easiest way to get money out of the taxpayer. And here's the distinction between those two. A bank levy is only good the day it hits at the federal level for the IRS. They have to hold that money for 21 days. During that 21 days, you can work out an agreement with the IRS after you get your financials together and submit those to the IRS. And once you set up an agreement, the IRS is going to lift the levy. Or if you can show financial hardship, they'll leave you alone altogether and they'll lift the levy. But a wage garnishment, unlike a bank levy, is continuous until you get it lifted. And I've known people that have their wages garnished for more than a year and they don't do anything about it.
So, before the IRS takes that step, though, what notices or warnings does the taxpayer usually receive?
Well, there's all kinds of notices. First is the assessment notice. Then they go into the CP 500 sequence. And the CP 504 is when people call us because it sounds like they're going to seize your assets if you don't do anything by X date, but they can't. They're just trying to scare you. The reason they can't seize assets at that point is because it does not contain your appeal rights. But if you get an LT11 letter, Evan, or you get a CP90, Evan, and you don't do anything about it, guess what? About two weeks after the 30 days has expired for you to file an appeal to stop the levy, they're going to come after you. And here's the
Wow.
other thing, Evan, that's going on with the IRS. Last year in 2025, they doubled in the trillions we're talking, or the billions we're talking about, what they've seized from people in terms of money than from 2024 because they're utilizing AI. They don't have the personnel, but they're utilizing AI. And now the time gap between those notices is narrowing and narrowing. It's collapsing. So once you get that first letter, it's not going to be 6 months to a year now before you get those other letters. The IRS is doing this, and we're getting all kinds of phone calls because the IRS is sending out those threatening letters to taxpayers, and we expect that to continue.
So, how does the IRS decide whether seizing property is worth pursuing in any individual case?
Well, if things fall through the cracks with the IRS, so some guy could have $100,000 in liability and the IRS doesn't go after him because they're a bureaucracy. They forget all about him. Things fall through the cracks. They don't have enough personnel. But anytime that you get enough liability, the IRS is going to come after you eventually. I just can't tell you when because they don't know when. There's no rhyme nor reason to what they do all the time. But, sticking your head in the sand and not doing anything about your IRS problem is a huge mistake. And I'm just going to relay something to you, Evan, that I probably talked to you about before. But it's been a while since I've been here, so I don't know if I've told you. But I had a guy in Tennessee, he owed $1 million. He had wrestled with him himself for years, so he thought he could handle it. He got his fourth RO. And our retainer was going to be $25,000 because he owed a lot of money. Well, he didn't pay the retainer 2 weeks later, and he's 55 years old. They took everything he had, including every last dime of his retirement. And I can tell you, if he had hired us, we would have called that revenue officer. We would have gotten more time for us to get our act together and get the paperwork into getting set up on a deal, and he would never have been levied. But this is the problem with people. They think they can do this on their own. And I got to tell you, Evan, when I was a small town lawyer, it was 15 hours a year of continuing legal ed. Now it's 50 to 100 hours or more a year. And that's true of every one of my attorneys in Missouri, Tennessee, Texas, Florida. And now, Evan, you don't know this. I just hired another attorney out of Oklahoma City, and eventually she's going to run my Houston, Texas office. So we're still booming. We're still booming, Evan.
We're taking it global. We're going. Listen, next time we're going to London. We're going to Spain.
Well, we had a client from South Africa not too long ago.
Wow.
Believe it. He lived in South Africa, and we had him as a client. So we get people from all over.
Amazing. No. So speaking of that though, you work with clients who are facing these aggressive collections like you just mentioned. Do you have a situation where understanding the risk of property seizure changed how someone approached resolving their tax issue?
Well, I don't know if I have a specific situation, but obviously it gets people's attentions when they send out those nasty letters about seizing their assets and their income. That's what motivates people. During the pandemic, we lost money that year. And the reason is the IRS quit sending out levy notices in April and didn't start back up until November. So when those levy notices don't come out to taxpayers, they don't call us. The number of phone calls we get goes down considerably. But when they are actively sending out those letters, our phones are ringing off the hook on a daily basis.
Once property is seized, though, what usually happens next? How does the IRS handle selling or applying the value towards your tax debt?
Well, that really doesn't happen, Evan, except in real estate. And they'll use what's called a quick sale value for the sale of real estate. We've never really been involved in that. There have been situations. I did have a client. He owed well over $100,000. He blew him off for years. So they decided to come after his home. Well, before they could come after it, because it's a 6-month to a year process to get all the approvals that are necessary to take somebody's home, he had sold it himself. And now, finally, he never paid a dime after that. They've never come back after him. He still owed them hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I think next month the clock runs out on collections. The IRS will lose out on hundreds of thousands of dollars from that taxpayer.
Are there certain types of property the IRS generally avoids taking, or situations where seizure is unlikely, though, Lance?
Well, like I said before, they're not going to come after for the most part, I've never seen them come after collectibles or jewelry or vehicles. Now, there may be certain instances where they do that. I haven't seen it, and I've helped out between 10 and 15,000 people over the years. So they're just not in the business of wanting to resell property because they just don't have the time, the manpower, or the resources to do that on a common basis.
What mistakes do people make when they ignore the IRS notices that could eventually lead to this enforcement actions like you were talking about?
Well, that's the mistake. They wait, and eventually they're going to get zapped then because 2 weeks after those LT11 letters come and the CP90s, you've got 30 days to stop the levy. Now, you may want to wait after the 30 days and get an equivalency hearing instead of a collection due process hearing, because guess what? The clock stops on collections when you do a collection due process hearing. But if you go after the 30 days and file an equivalency hearing, the clock's still running on collections. So if we're within 2 years of the statute being run out for collections, we're going to file the equivalency hearing because it could be 6 months or longer before you even get a hearing.
For someone listening who is worried about the possibility of the IRS taking property, what should they understand about how these situations typically unfold, Lance?
Well, the way it unfolds is if you ignore those letters, you're going to get zapped. But it's going to be your Social Security, a wage levy, or a bank levy. That's the most common because it's the easiest for the IRS. Now, the Social Security levy is limited to 15% of your Social Security check. But once that check's deposited and it's all direct debit, they can take the whole thing through a bank levy. So you got to watch out. And even though the bank levy's only good for 21 days, but it's only good the day it hits and they got to hold the money for 21 days, the IRS can still issue successive bank levies. So just because they do it once doesn't mean that's the end of the game. They can do it again. But very seldom have I ever seen them do a second one before the first one is finished.
Lance, good stuff. Thank you for your time, brother.
Thank you, Evan. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So thanks for listening to Resilience and Resolve with Lance Drury. IRS enforcement actions can be intimidating, but understanding how and when they occur can help people respond before things escalate further. If you're dealing with serious IRS tax problems and want guidance on your option, visit lancedrurylaw.com. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who could benefit from this information. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.